3 months of freedom vanished the second Elena saw him across the restaurant. Adrian Volkov, the man who'd consumed her life with dangerous intensity, then disappeared without explanation. She'd moved on, started dating someone safe, someone normal. But Adrian didn't come to talk. He came to remind her of one brutal truth. In his world, what belongs to him stays his. When he appears at her door hours later with a diamond ring and a confession that shatters everything she thought she knew, Elena realizes escaping a mafia boss was never really an option. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain started just as Elena's fork touched her plate. She noticed because Daniel had been mid-sentence, talking about some project at work, something involving quarterly reports and budget approvals, and the sudden drumming against the restaurant windows made him pause. He smiled, that gentle, slightly self-conscious smile he always gave when he realized he'd been going on too long about something she probably didn't care about. "Sorry," he said. "I'm boring you." "You're not," Elena lied, returning his smile. She wasn't bored, exactly. Daniel Hayes was many things: thoughtful, stable, refreshingly uncomplicated, but boring wasn't one of them. Or maybe it was, and that was precisely what she needed. 3 months ago, she would have called this dinner painfully ordinary. Now, ordinary felt like oxygen after nearly drowning. Daniel reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. "I'm really glad we're doing this. You seem lighter lately." "I feel lighter." It wasn't entirely untrue. The knot in her chest that had lived there for months had finally started to loosen. She slept through the night now, stopped jumping at shadows. The constant hum of anxiety that had followed her everywhere, wondering when he'd show up, what he'd say, whether she'd imagined the whole thing, had finally begun to fade. Adrian Volkov was gone. Actually, properly gone this time. And she was fine with it. She had to be. "I was thinking," Daniel continued, his thumb making small circles on her palm, "maybe next weekend we could—" He stopped. Not because the waiter appeared or because someone knocked over a glass. He stopped because Elena's entire body had gone rigid, her eyes fixed on something over his shoulder. "Elena?" She couldn't breathe. Across the restaurant, standing near the entrance like he'd materialized out of the rain itself, was Adrian. He wore black. He always wore black. The kind of tailored perfection that made every other man in the room look like they'd gotten dressed in the dark. Water darkened his hair, droplets catching in the overhead light as he stood completely still, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on her. Not on Daniel, not on the restaurant, on her. Like she was the only person in the room. Like she'd always been the only person in any room he walked into. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs. "Babe?" Daniel's voice came from very far away. "You okay?" She forced herself to look at him, to see the concern in his normal, kind face. To remember that this dinner with a man who asked about her day and held doors and didn't disappear for months without explanation, this was real life, safe life. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just thought I saw someone." When she looked back, Adrian was gone. The spot where he'd stood was empty. Just the hostess station and a couple waiting for their table. No trace of him anywhere, like he'd never been there at all. "Elena, you're shaking." She was. Her whole body was trembling, fork rattling against her plate. "I need a minute," she said, standing too quickly. Her chair scraped loudly. "Bathroom. Do you want me to— I'm fine, just give me a second." She walked, not ran, because running would mean admitting something was wrong, toward the back of the restaurant. The bathroom was down a narrow hallway past the kitchen, and she pushed through the door like she was breaking the surface of water. The mirror showed her exactly what she expected: pale skin, wide eyes, lips she'd been biting without realizing. She looked terrified. Because she was terrified. Not of Adrian, or not exactly. Of what seeing him meant. Of the fact that 3 months of careful reconstruction could collapse in a single glance. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hand shook as she opened the message. "You look beautiful tonight, but you already know that." Another buzz. "He doesn't deserve you," and another. "I'll be at your apartment in 1 hour. We need to talk." Elena stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then she deleted the messages, blocked the number, and gripped the edge of the sink until her knuckles went white. This wasn't happening. She wouldn't let it happen. When she returned to the table, Daniel had paid the check. "I thought we could head out," he said carefully. "You seem like you're not feeling well." "I'm okay, really." "Elena." He stood, taking her jacket from the back of her chair and holding it open for her. "You've been gone 20 minutes, and you look like you've seen a ghost." Maybe she had. They walked to her apartment in silence. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and Daniel kept his arm around her shoulders, protective, steady, everything Adrian had never been. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked when they reached her building. "There's nothing to talk about. If something's wrong, nothing's wrong." She kissed him quickly, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. "I'll call you tomorrow." She could feel his confusion, his worry, but she couldn't deal with it. Not when every nerve in her body was screaming that Adrian Volkov had just walked back into her life. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, a small one-bedroom she'd moved into after everything fell apart. New place, new start, new Elena. She climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator, needing the time to think. Maybe he wouldn't show up. Maybe those texts were just his way of rattling her, reminding her he was still out there. Maybe he was sitting on the floor outside her door. Elena stopped 3 steps from the landing. Adrian looked up, and for a second, just 1 second, something raw crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that controlled, unreadable expression she knew too well. "You blocked my number," he said. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know. I meant what I said 3 months ago. We're done." "I know that too." He stood, and she hated how her body reacted, the way her pulse jumped, the way her breath caught. He moved like violence in slow motion, all leashed power and dangerous grace. "Then why are you here?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Because I tried to stay away. I really did." "You succeeded for 3 months. Every single day." His voice was low, controlled, but something burned underneath. "Every single day I told myself you were better off without me. Safer, happier." "I am." "Are you?" The question hung between them. Elena's hand shook as she dug her keys from her purse. "You need to leave." "I will, after you hear me out." "I don't want to hear, Elena." He said her name like it hurt. "Please." She should have slammed the door in his face, should have called the police, called Daniel, called anyone. Instead, she unlocked her apartment and walked inside, leaving the door open behind her. Adrian followed, closing it with a quiet click that sounded too final. Her apartment was small, but hers. Bookshelves she'd built herself, plants she actually managed to keep alive, art prints that made her smile. Normal things, safe things. Adrian looked around like he was cataloging every detail, and she hated that she noticed how out of place he seemed here. Too large, too intense, too everything. "Nice place," he said. "Cut the small talk." He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her chest tighten. "I love you." Elena laughed, sharp, bitter. "You're unbelievable." "I know how that sounds. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like manipulation. Like you're saying whatever you think will work." "It's the truth." "The truth." She threw her purse on the couch, anger finally cutting through fear. "The truth is you disappeared. For months. No calls, no texts, no explanation. And now you show up at my dinner with my boyfriend. He's not right for you. That's not your decision." "I know." Adrian's control was cracking, something desperate bleeding through. "I know I have no right to be here. No right to ask anything from you, but seeing you with him made you realize I'd moved on? Made me realize I can't." The words hit like a physical blow. Elena sank onto the arm of her couch. "This is insane." "Probably. You can't just show up and say you love me and expect—" "I don't expect anything." He moved closer, stopping just outside her reach. "But you deserve to know why I left." "I don't care why. I'm the head of the Volkov organization." The room went very quiet. Elena stared at him. "What?" "My family runs one of the largest criminal networks on the East Coast. Trafficking, money laundering, political corruption. If you can name it, we're probably involved." His voice was flat, factual, like he was reading from a script. "I inherited the position when my father was killed. I was 23. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. You're, you're a criminal? I'm a lot of things, most of them not good. Elena stood, needing distance, needing space to process. All those months we were together, I kept you separate from it, as separate as I could. That's why you never let me meet your friends, never took me to your place. Yes. And the disappearing, the last-minute cancellations? Business. The word was bitter in his mouth. The kind I couldn't tell you about. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to think through the shock. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't lie to you anymore, and because, he paused, because the life I lead, it's dangerous for me and for anyone close to me. I thought if I walked away, you'd be safe, that you'd forget about me and move on and be happy. I am happy. Bullshit. The word cracked through the air. Adrian closed the distance between them, and she could see the strain in his face, the exhaustion, the desperation he was barely holding back. You're pretending, he said quietly. Dating some guy who probably plans your dates a week in advance and never surprises you. Having dinners where you smile and nod and don't feel a damn thing. That's not... I saw your face tonight, Elena. When you looked at me. You felt something. Fear, she whispered. I felt fear. Not just fear. He was right. She hated that he was right. This is insane, she repeated. You're a criminal. You just admitted to... I know what I am. His voice gentled, and somehow that was worse. I'm not asking you to forget that. I'm not asking you to pretend I'm something I'm not. Then what are you asking? Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. Elena's heart stopped. I'm asking you to marry me. The box opened to reveal a diamond that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Simple, elegant, devastating. You've lost your mind. Probably. I'm dating someone else. I know. You're a mobster. Yes. And you think showing up with a ring is going to... No. Adrian set the box on her coffee table, hands steady even though his voice wasn't. I think you have every right to slam that door in my face and never see me again. But I also think you deserve to know that I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. And now? Now I realize something worse than me being in your life. What's that? You being in danger because I'm not. The words didn't make sense. What are you talking about? Adrian's expression darkened. Someone found out about you. About us. One of my competitors, a man named Viktor Zharkov. He's been looking for leverage against me for months. And he found it. Cold dread pooled in Elena's stomach. He knows about me. He knows I cared about you. That's enough. But we're not together anymore. You left. Everyone knows you left. Doesn't matter. Adrian's jaw clenched. Victor doesn't need facts. He needs belief. And he believes you're my weakness. So what? I'm just supposed to hide? Change my name? Run? You could. That's not an answer. The other option is you marry me. Become untouchable. Under my protection, no one would dare touch you. Elena laughed, wild, disbelieving. This is your solution? Marry you and become what? A mafia wife? Yes. That's insane. It's practical. It's crazy. We haven't seen each other in months. I know. And you're asking me to marry you? I'm offering you protection. Same thing. No. Adrian's eyes burned into hers. If this was just about protection, I'd have sent guards. I'd have arranged something quiet, something anonymous. But I'm here because I want you to choose me. Not out of fear, not because you have to, but because you want to. Elena sat down hard on the couch. This can't be real. It is. You're actually serious. You want me to marry you? Yes. And if I say no? Something shuddered in his expression. Then I'll assign security. Someone you'll never see, but who will make sure nothing happens to you. And I'll walk out that door and never contact you again. You promise? Yes. She should say no, should tell him to leave and take his ring and his protection and his insane proposal and never come back. But a small, traitorous part of her whispered, what if he's telling the truth? I need time, she finally said. You don't have time. Then I guess you better give me some. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. 3 days. A week. Elena, a week, or I call the police right now and tell them everything you just told me. His mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. You wouldn't. Try me. They stared at each other, and she could see him calculating, weighing options. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Send a detail to... He glanced at her. What's the address? She told him, hating herself for it. 24/7 rotation. No contact with the principal unless absolutely necessary. He listened to something on the other end. I don't care what it costs. Just do it. He hung up. You have a week. Armed security outside your building starting in 20 minutes. You already had people watching me. Of course I did. The casual admission should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost expected. Adrian picked up the ring box and set it on the table between them. Think about it. Really think about it. Because once you say yes, there's no going back. And if I say no, then you never see me again. He moved toward the door, and Elena's chest constricted. Adrian, he stopped, hand on the doorknob. Why now? Why not weeks ago, months ago? When he turned back, the mask had slipped completely. What she saw underneath was raw and real and terrifying in its intensity. Because I saw you with him tonight, smiling, holding his hand, living the normal life I can't give you. His voice dropped. And I realized I'd rather drag you into my world than watch you be happy in his. The confession hung in the air between them, selfish, honest, devastating. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me, Elena whispered. I know. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that echoed through her suddenly empty apartment. Elena stared at the ring box on her coffee table, light catching in the diamond's facets, throwing tiny rainbows across her ceiling. 3 months of freedom, destroyed in a single night. She picked up her phone and called Daniel. Hey, he answered immediately. Are you okay? I need to tell you something. The pause was heavy. Okay. Not over the phone. Can you come over tomorrow? Elena, you're scaring me. I'm scaring myself. Another pause. I'll be there first thing in the morning. Thank you. She hung up and sat in the darkness, holding the ring box but not opening it. Outside, she heard a car pull up. The security Adrian had promised. Men with guns, watching her building, keeping her safe from threats she'd never even known existed. Her phone buzzed. A different unknown number. Sleep well, Elena. And think carefully, because whatever you decide in the next 7 days will change everything. She blocked that number too. Then she opened the ring box and stared at the diamond, seeing her reflection fractured in its depths. Somewhere in the city, Adrian Volkov was probably sitting in some expensive penthouse, surrounded by the violence and power he'd been born into, probably planning, calculating, already knowing what her answer would be before she did. And the worst part, the absolutely terrifying part, was that she wasn't sure he was wrong. Potem. Day 2. 2. Daniel arrived at 8 in the morning with coffee and pastries, his face creased with worry. Okay, he said, setting the bag on her counter. Talk to me. Elena had been up all night, rehearsing this conversation. She'd written it out, deleted it, written it again. Nothing sounded right. I lied to you, she started. His expression didn't change. About what? About my past. About why I moved here. About everything. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. I'm listening. So she told him. Not everything. Not the criminal empire part, not the threats. But enough. About Adrian. About the relationship that had consumed her. About the way he'd disappeared. And the way she'd tried to move on. He showed up last night, she finished. That's who I saw at the restaurant. Daniel was quiet for a long time. And? And nothing. I told him to leave. But nothing. Elena. He said her name gently, and that somehow made it worse. I'm not stupid. Something happened. Something that made you call me at 11 at night, sounding terrified. I needed you to know that I wasn't completely honest with you. about where I was emotionally. Are you still in love with him? The question landed like a punch. I don't know, she admitted. Daniel nodded slowly like he'd expected that answer. Does he want you back? It's complicated. That's not an answer. Yes, she said quietly. He wants me back. And you're considering it. It wasn't a question. Elena met his eyes, and what she saw there broke her heart. Understanding, resignation, and underneath it all, a kindness that made her want to cry. You're a good person, Daniel. But I'm not him. You're better than him. That's not the same thing as being what you want. Silence filled her small kitchen. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. Daniel stood, and for a moment she thought he might yell, might demand explanations, might make this harder than it already was. Instead, he just kissed her forehead. Be careful, he said. Whatever this guy is, whoever he is, be careful. Then he left, taking the coffee and pastries with him, and Elena was alone again with a diamond ring and 7 days to make an impossible decision. Day 4. The security Adrian had assigned was invisible but omnipresent. Elena never saw them directly, but she felt their presence. The black SUV that was always parked within view of her building, the way certain people seemed to materialize whenever she went outside. It should have felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in armor. On the 4th day, she went to work. The bookstore where she worked part-time was quiet, tucked between a coffee shop and a dry cleaner. Mrs. Chen, the owner, was reorganizing the mystery section when Elena arrived. You look terrible, Mrs. Chen said by way of greeting. Thanks. Man trouble? Is it that obvious? Mrs. Chen snorted. Honey, I've been married 40 years. I know man trouble when I see it. She handed Elena a stack of books. Want to talk about it? Not really. Want to pretend to work while I make you tea and give unsolicited advice? Despite everything, Elena smiled. That sounds perfect. They worked in comfortable silence for an hour, Elena shelving books while Mrs. Chen rattled around in the back office. When she emerged with 2 steaming mugs, she settled into her usual chair by the window. So, she said, is he worth it? Elena didn't pretend not to know who she meant. I don't know. Does he make you happy? He makes me feel alive. Not the same thing. I know. Mrs. Chen sipped her tea thoughtfully. My husband, when I met him, my parents forbade it. He was poor, uneducated, wrong religion, wrong everything. They said I'd regret it. Did you? Every day, she grinned, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because being with him, even when it's hard, even when we're fighting or broke or lost, it feels right. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And if he was dangerous? If being with him put you at risk? Mrs. Chen's expression sobered. Then I'd have to decide if loving him was worth dying for. The words hung in the air. That's a hell of a choice, Elena said quietly. Love usually is. Day 6, the attack came at 2 in the morning. Elena was half asleep when the sound of breaking glass jolted her awake. She grabbed her phone, heart hammering, and had just enough time to register the shadow moving across her living room before someone tackled her, a hand clamped over her mouth. Quiet. Not a threat. A command. She bit down hard, tasting blood, and her attacker swore. But instead of pulling away, he just gripped tighter, dragging her toward the window. Then the door exploded inward. Adrian's men moved like shadows, 3 of them, guns drawn, faces covered. The man holding Elena released her and dove for his own weapon, but he was too slow. 2 shots, silenced but devastating, and he dropped. Elena scrambled backward, pressing against the wall, watching as the security team swept her apartment with military precision. Clear. Clear. Package secure. One of them, the leader, she guessed, turned to her. Miss Carter, we need to move you. Now. I'm not going anywhere until... That wasn't a request. But before they could reach her, another figure appeared in the doorway. Adrian. He looked like violence personified, dark suit disheveled, jaw tight, eyes scanning her with an intensity that stole her breath. Are you hurt? Elena shook her head, not trusting her voice. Check the perimeter, Adrian ordered his men. I want to know how they got past you. They dispersed immediately, leaving her alone with him. Adrian crossed to her in 3 strides, hands framing her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Are you sure you're not hurt? I'm fine. You shot him. Yes. Is he dead? Yes. The casual confirmation should have horrified her. Instead, she just felt numb. This is what you meant, she said, about the danger. Yes. How did they find me? Doesn't matter. What matters is, how did they find me, Adrian? His jaw clenched. Victor has people everywhere, probably been watching you for weeks. And your security didn't notice? Clearly not. The self-recrimination in his voice was brutal. Elena pulled away from his touch, needing space to think. This is insane. Someone just tried to kidnap me. In my own apartment. I know. And you killed him. I'd kill anyone who touched you. The simple truth of it hit her like a wave. You can't stay here, Adrian continued. It's not safe. Nowhere's safe. My home is. Elena laughed, sharp, bitter. Your home, where the head of a crime family lives. Yes. That's your solution? Lock me in a fortress? For now. And then what? Adrian's expression hardened. Then you marry me, take my name, and become untouchable. Or you don't, and I put you somewhere so far off the grid that Victor will never find you. Those are my options? Prison or witness protection? Those are your options for staying alive. The truth of it settled over her like ice water. Elena looked at the body on her floor. The man who'd been sent to take her, who'd probably been following orders, who was now dead because Adrian Volkov didn't tolerate threats to what was his. I need my things, she heard herself say. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. Surprise, relief, something she couldn't name. I'll have them packed. I can pack my own. You're not staying here another second. He pulled out his phone and made a series of rapid calls while Elena stood in her destroyed living room, trying to process the fact that her life had just irrevocably changed. 20 minutes later, she was in the back of an armored SUV, watching her apartment building disappear in the side mirror. Adrian sat beside her, silent, one hand resting on the seat between them, close enough to touch, but not touching. Where are we going? She finally asked. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. They drove through the city, taking a route that seemed designed to lose any tails, until they reached a building in the financial district. Underground parking, private elevator, security at every checkpoint. Adrian's penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Elena stepped inside and stopped. It was unexpected. She'd anticipated something cold, sterile, all glass and steel and masculine posturing. Instead, she found warm hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, art that looked chosen rather than expensive for the sake of it. Guest room's down the hall, Adrian said. Everything you need should be there. If not, tell me and I'll get it. Just like that? Just like that. She wandered through the space, hyper-aware of him watching her. This is really your home? Yes. It's not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Something more, she gestured vaguely. Mafia-ish? Despite everything, his mouth curved slightly. What does a mafia home look like? Dark leather, animal heads on the walls, maybe a throne made of your enemy's bones. I'll see what I can do about the throne. The almost joke broke something in her chest. Elena turned to face him fully. You saved my life tonight. I put your life in danger by existing. That's not... It's exactly what happened. His voice was hard, self-directed anger bleeding through. Victor wouldn't have touched you if you weren't connected to me. I'm not connected to you. We haven't been together in months. Doesn't matter to him. You were mine once. That's enough. The possessive phrasing should have bothered her, should have set off alarm bells and sent her running, but all she felt was tired. I can't think right now, she admitted, about marriage or danger or any of it. I need to sleep. Adrian nodded. Guest room, second door on the left, bathrooms attached. There's clothes in the closet that should fit. How did you, I had someone shop. You had someone shop for me? Before you even knew if I'd come here? I hoped. The admission was quiet, almost vulnerable. Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she just walked down the hall and found the room exactly as promised. The bed was enormous. The sheets looked like they cost more than her rent, and the closet was indeed stocked with clothes, her size, her style, like whoever bought them had studied her wardrobe. She changed into pajamas that were softer than anything she owned and crawled under covers that felt like being wrapped in clouds. Sleep should have been impossible. Instead, she was unconscious in seconds. Day 7. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For one disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it crashed back. The attack, the gunshots, Adrian's penthouse. She found him in the kitchen, standing at the counter in jeans and a t-shirt that shouldn't have been devastating but somehow was. Domestic Adrian. Unguarded Adrian. Coffee? He offered. Please. He poured her a cup. Black, no sugar, exactly how she took it, and slid it across the counter. They stood in silence, drinking coffee like this was normal, like her life hadn't exploded less than 12 hours ago. Victor's dead, Adrian said finally. Elena set down her cup carefully. What? He died this morning. Car accident. Very tragic. The flat tone made it clear exactly how accidental the accident had been. You had him killed. Yes. Just like that. He tried to take you. There was never going to be another outcome. Elena should have been horrified. Should have demanded details. Should have insisted on calling the police. Should have run screaming back to her normal life. Instead, she just asked, "Is it over?" For now. That's not the same as yes. There's no yes in my world, just varying degrees of temporary peace. She absorbed that. So I'm safe? Safer. And if I go home, back to my apartment, my job, my life? Adrian's expression shuddered. You could. I'd still assign security, but yes, you could go back. And the proposal? Still stands. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, at the exhaustion bruising his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped his coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Why me? She asked quietly. You could have anyone, someone from your world who understands it, who wouldn't need protection or explanations or, I don't want anyone else. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They stared at each other across the kitchen island, two people who'd tried to walk away and failed spectacularly. I don't love Daniel, Elena said. Adrian went very still. I wanted to, I tried to, but every time he kissed me, every time he talked about the future, all I could think was that it felt wrong, not bad, just not right. Elena, let me finish. She set down her coffee. You're dangerous. Your world is dangerous. Being with you means living with the constant knowledge that someone might use me to hurt you, that I might wake up to men breaking into my apartment, that the person I love might not come home someday. Yes, Adrian said quietly, all of that is true. And you still want me to marry you? Yes. Why? He crossed to her, moving slowly, giving her time to pull away. When he reached her, his hands came up to frame her face with a gentleness that contrasted everything about him. Because when I'm with you, he said, voice rough, I remember what it's like to be human. Not just the head of an organization, or my father's legacy, or a weapon pointed at anyone who crosses us. Just a man who loves a woman who sees him clearly and chooses him anyway. I haven't chosen anything yet. I know. Elena reached up, covering his hands with hers. If I say yes, and I'm not saying I will, but if I did, what would that actually mean, day to day? It would mean you'd live here, with me, protected, always. It would mean some of your freedom gets traded for security. It would mean the world would see you as mine, which makes you powerful and endangered in equal measure. And us? I can't promise you easy. I can't promise you safe. I can't even promise you normal. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. But I can promise you that I will burn down anything that tries to hurt you. I can promise you that you'll never wonder where you stand with me. And I can promise you that whatever life we build, it'll be honest. Honestly dangerous. Yes. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision crushing down on her. I need to think. How long? Give me until tonight. Adrian nodded and stepped back, releasing her. Tonight, then. He left her alone in the kitchen with her coffee and her thoughts and a decision that would change everything. The day passed in a strange limbo. Adrian disappeared into his office for hours, the sound of low voices and ringing phones filtering through the closed door. Elena explored the penthouse, finding pieces of him in unexpected places. Worn paperbacks on a shelf, a guitar in the corner of the living room, photographs of people she didn't recognize. In his bedroom, which she found by accident while looking for a bathroom, everything was dark and minimal, except for one thing: a sketch pad on his nightstand, filled with drawings of her. Her face, her hands, her sleeping, her laughing. Page after page of her, captured in charcoal and graphite, detailed enough to make her chest ache. She closed the pad carefully and left before he could catch her snooping. By evening, she'd made her decision. She found him on the balcony, standing at the railing, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. "Adrian!" He turned, and she could see the tension in every line of his body, waiting, bracing. Elena pulled the ring box from her pocket. She'd found it in her bag, packed along with her other things, and held it out. "Ask me again." His eyes widened. "Elena, ask me properly this time. Not as protection or strategy or practicality. Ask me because you want to, because you mean it." Adrian took the box, then dropped to one knee right there on the balcony, backlit by the dying sun. "Elena Carter," he said, voice steady despite the emotion burning in his eyes. "I love you. I've loved you since the first time I saw you. Marrying me will be dangerous and complicated and probably insane, but I swear to you, on everything I have, everything I am, that I will spend every day of my life protecting you, choosing you, loving you. Will you marry me?" The city stretched out below them, a million lights flickering to life as darkness fell. Elena looked at this man, this dangerous, complicated, impossible man, and made her choice. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but it echoed like thunder. Adrian stood, hands shaking as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, deep and desperate and devastating, and Elena kissed him back, tasting promise and danger and a future she couldn't begin to predict. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Ask me in 50 years. His laugh was soft, genuine, and more beautiful than anything she'd ever heard. Behind them, the city glittered and hummed, full of violence and possibility, and all the chaos that came with loving someone who lived in shadows. But for right now, in this moment, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. She felt home. The ring felt heavier than it looked. Elena turned her hand in the morning light, watching the diamond catch fire, throwing tiny prisms across Adrian's white sheets. He was still asleep beside her, one arm draped across her waist in a possessiveness that didn't end even in unconsciousness. She'd said yes 12 hours ago. 12 hours, and already her entire world had shifted on its axis. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it carefully, trying not to wake Adrian, but his arm tightened immediately. "Don't," he mumbled into the pillow. "It might be important." "Nothing's more important than this." Despite everything, she smiled. "You're surprisingly romantic for a crime boss." "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." She checked the phone anyway. 7 missed calls from Mrs. Chen, 3 from her landlord, and a text from a number she didn't recognize. The text just said, "Congratulations on your engagement. We should talk soon." M. "Who's M?" Elena asked. Adrian was awake instantly, all traces of sleep vanishing. He took the phone, read the message, and his expression went dark. "My uncle." "You have an uncle?" "Unfortunately." He deleted the message and handed back her phone. "Mikhail Volkov, my father's younger brother. He's been difficult since I took over the organization." "Difficult how?" "He thinks the position should have gone to him, that I'm too young, too reckless, too soft." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You? Soft?" "Comparatively speaking." Adrian sat up, running a hand through his hair. "He's going to have opinions about our marriage." "Should I be worried?" "No, but you should be prepared." Before she could ask what that meant, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and swore softly. "Mikhail," Elena guessed. "Worse." "My mother," he answered in rapid Russian, his tone respectful but strained. Elena couldn't understand the words, but she didn't need to. The conversation was clearly not going well. When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted. She wants to meet you. That's good? My mother doesn't do anything that's simply good. She's strategic about everything, including family dinners. When? Tonight. Elena's stomach dropped. Tonight? Adrian, I don't know anything about your family, your world, what I'm supposed to. Hey. He turned to face her fully, hands framing her face. Breathe. I can't breathe. I'm meeting your crime family mother tonight. She's not that bad. You're a terrible liar. His mouth quirked. She's gonna love you. How do you know? Because I love you. And my mother respects very few things, but genuine feeling is one of them. Elena wanted to believe him, but the knot in her stomach suggested this was going to be significantly more complicated than he was making it sound. They spent the morning in careful domesticity, coffee, breakfast that Adrian cooked with surprising competence, the newspaper spread across the counter. It felt almost normal, except for the armed guards Elena could see through the windows, and the way Adrian's phone never stopped buzzing with messages he mostly ignored. I need to work for a few hours, he said finally, rinsing their plates. You'll be safe here. There's security on every floor, cameras everywhere, and the building itself is a fortress. I got it. If you need anything, I'll figure it out. He studied her for a moment, like he was trying to decide if she was serious or just pretending to be okay. Then he kissed her forehead and disappeared into his office. Elena wandered the penthouse, feeling restless and slightly trapped. She found herself in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city she'd lived in for years, but was now seen from an entirely different vantage point. Her phone rang. Mrs. Chen. You're alive, Mrs. Chen said without preamble. I was starting to think you'd been kidnapped. Sorry, I should have called. Your apartment was broken into. The police came by the store asking questions. You want to tell me what's going on? Elena closed her eyes. She'd been so caught up in everything with Adrian that she hadn't even thought about the aftermath of the attack. It's complicated. It always is with you. Mrs. Chen's tone softened. Are you safe? Yes. Are you sure? I'm with someone who can protect me. The man from before? The one who made you feel alive? Yes. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Just promise me you know what you're doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, at least you're honest about it. She paused. Your job's here whenever you want it, if you want it. Thank you. After they hung up, Elena stood in the silence of Adrian's penthouse and tried to imagine going back to her old life. The bookstore, the small apartment, the simple routine of normal existence. It felt like trying to remember someone else's memories. By evening, she'd worked herself into a state of barely controlled panic about dinner with Adrian's mother. What do I wear? She asked, staring at the closet full of clothes that had been bought for her. What do I say? What do I not say? Adrian emerged from the bedroom in a dark suit, looking unfairly calm. Wear whatever makes you feel confident. Say whatever you're thinking. Don't let her intimidate you. That's not helpful. She's going to test you. That's what she does. But Elena, see, he caught her hand, pulling her close. You already survived Victor's men breaking into your apartment. You can survive dinner with my mother. Those feel like very different skill sets. Not as different as you'd think. She chose a simple black dress, minimal jewelry, and pulled her hair back in a way that felt both polished and severe. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. You look beautiful, Adrian said from the doorway. I look terrified. That too. The drive to his mother's house took 40 minutes, winding through increasingly expensive neighborhoods until they reached a gated estate that made Adrian's penthouse look modest by comparison. This is where you grew up? Elena asked as they pulled through the gates. Part of the time. We had other houses. Of course you did. The main house was all stone and old money, the kind of place that had probably been in the family for generations. A woman stood on the steps, late 50s, elegant in the way that only came from a lifetime of privilege and power. Katerina Volkov didn't smile as they approached. Adrian, she said, her accent subtle but present. You're late. Traffic. There's never traffic when you want there to be. Her gaze shifted to Elena, cataloging everything in a single sweep. So this is the girl who's caused such disruption. Mother, this is Elena Carter, my fiancée. Adrian's hand found the small of Elena's back, protective. Elena, my mother, Katerina. It's nice to meet you, Elena said, extending her hand. Katerina looked at it for a long moment before shaking it briefly. We'll see. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have seated 30, but held only 4. Katerina at the head, Adrian and Elena on one side. And across from them, a man Elena assumed was Mikhail. He was younger than Katerina, probably early 50s, with Adrian's dark eyes but none of his controlled restraint. He smiled when he saw them, but it didn't reach his eyes. Adrian, finally introducing us to your secret. Elena, my uncle Mikhail. Pleasure, Mikhail said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. Tell me, Elena, what do you do? I work in a bookstore. How quaint. Mikhail, Katerina said sharply. Manners. I'm simply curious about the woman who's managed to capture my nephew's attention. It's not a position many have achieved. The first course arrived, something expensive and probably delicious that Elena couldn't taste past the tension. So, Katerina said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin, how did you meet? Elena glanced at Adrian, who gave her a nearly imperceptible nod. Permission to be honest, or at least honest adjacent. At a coffee shop, Elena said. He spilled his drink on me. It wasn't exactly true. They'd met at a gallery opening, both reaching for the same champagne glass, but it felt safer than the real story. And you found this charming? Mikhail asked. I found him persistent. Adrian's mouth curved slightly. Persistent, Katerina repeated. Yes, that does sound like Adrian. His father was the same way. Once he decided he wanted something, there was no dissuading him. The mention of Adrian's father shifted something in the room. You must understand, Elena, Katerina continued, that marrying into this family is not like marrying into others. There are expectations, responsibilities. I understand that. Do you? Mikhail leaned forward slightly. Do you understand that you'll be scrutinized by everyone in our circle? That your every action will reflect on Adrian and, by extension, on all of us? I understand that I love your nephew. The rest, I'll figure out. Mikhail laughed, sharp and humorless. Love. How refreshingly naive. That's enough, Adrian said quietly, but there was steel underneath. Is it? Because I think it's important that your fiancé understands what she's agreeing to. This isn't some romantic fairy tale, Elena. This is a business, and marriages in our world serve strategic purposes. Then it's good that our marriage serves one, Elena said, meeting his gaze directly. Protection, legitimacy, union. Mikhail's eyes narrowed. Adrian's been coaching you. Adrian's been honest with me about everything. Everything? Mikhail's smile turned sharp. Has he told you about Prague? About what happened to the Kozlov family? Mikhail, Katerina's voice could have cut glass. We don't discuss business at dinner. Of course not. How uncivilized of me. But his eyes stayed on Elena, calculating. The rest of dinner passed in tense civility. Katerina asked polite questions about Elena's family, her education, her interests. Mikhail made pointed comments disguised as small talk, and Adrian sat beside Elena, a coiled spring ready to snap at the first real threat. When they finally escaped to the car, Elena felt like she'd survived a battle. That was worse than the break-in, she said. Adrian laughed, genuine and surprised. You did well. Your uncle hates me. My uncle hates everyone. Don't take it personally. And your mother? Is reserving judgment, which from her is practically approval. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights blurring past the windows. What's Prague? Elena asked finally. Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Something that happened a long time ago. How long? 5 years, before I met you. What happened? He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Then, the Kozlov family tried to move into our territory. My father was still alive then, but he was sick, dying, so I handled it. Handled it how? Permanently. The single word carried the weight of violence she could only imagine. How many people? She asked quietly. Does it matter? It might. Adrian pulled the car over suddenly, parking on an empty street. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was raw. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would make you sick. Ordered deaths, sanctioned violence, made decisions that prioritized power over people. That's who I am. That's who I'll always be. I know. Do you? Because it's easy to say you know in theory. It's different when you're looking at me and thinking about all the blood on my hands. Elena reached over and took one of those hands in hers. I'm not naive enough to think you're anything other than what you are, but I'm also not naive enough to think people are only one thing. What does that mean? It means you're a killer, and you're also the man who draws pictures of me when he can't sleep. You're ruthless, and you're also the person who remembers how I take my coffee. You've destroyed families, and you're building one with me. She squeezed his hand. You're not just one thing, Adrian. None of us are. He pulled her across the center console, kissing her hard enough to bruise. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They stayed like that for a long moment, two people who'd chosen each other despite every logical reason not to. When they finally returned to the penthouse, there was a message waiting, an envelope slipped under the door, expensive paper with no return address. Adrian opened it, his expression darkening as he read. What is it? Elena asked. An invitation to our engagement party. That's good? It's from Mikhail. Oh. Adrian handed her the card. The writing was elegant, formal, announcing a celebration in 3 days at one of the city's most exclusive venues. He's making a move, Adrian said. A party is a move? In our world, everything is a move. He's forcing me to either accept and give him a platform to publicly question our engagement, or decline, which makes me look weak. So we accept and show him he's wrong. It's not that simple. Why not? Adrian sat down heavily on the couch, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely tired. Because engagement parties in our circle aren't just celebrations. They're political theater. Every family in the organization will be there, watching, judging, looking for weakness. Elena sat beside him. Then we don't give them any. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. Then explain it to me. So he did. For the next hour, Adrian walked her through the landscape of his world, the families that made up the organization, the alliances and feuds that went back generations, the delicate balance of power that kept everything from exploding into open war. Mikhail's been building support, Adrian explained, quietly, carefully. He thinks I'm too young to hold the position, that my father's death left a vacuum that should have been filled by experience, not heredity. But you were your father's choice. His choice, not everyone else's. And our marriage threatens that. Our marriage proves I'm building something beyond just maintaining power, that I have priorities outside the organization. He looked at her. In Mikhail's eyes, that makes me vulnerable. Elena absorbed this. So what do? We go to the party. We show them we're united. And we hope that's enough. And if it's not, Adrian's expression hardened. Then we deal with whatever comes next. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Adrian had a team of people. She wasn't entirely sure what to call them, since crime family event planners seemed both accurate and absurd, who descended on the penthouse with fabric swatches and guest lists and 1,000 questions Elena had no idea how to answer. Do you have a preference for flowers? A woman named Irina asked, showing Elena pictures that all looked identical. Not really. What about music? Classical, jazz, modern? Whatever's appropriate. Irina's expression suggested Elena was being deliberately difficult. Mrs. Volkov, these decisions reflect on you and your husband. He's not my husband yet. In our world, the engagement is as binding as the marriage. People will be watching to see what kind of woman Adrian has chosen. The weight of it settled over Elena like a heavy coat. She was being evaluated, categorized, judged before she'd even stepped into the role. What would you choose? Elena asked finally. Irina blinked, surprised. Me? You know this world. You know what people expect. What would you do? A small smile crossed Irina's face, the first genuine expression Elena had seen from her. White roses. String quartet for cocktail hour, jazz trio for dinner. And I'd make sure everyone knew you picked everything yourself, even if you didn't. Why? Because strength in our world isn't always about being the loudest. Sometimes it's about appearing effortlessly in control. Elena learned more about Adrian's world from Irina in 3 days than she had in all her previous conversations with Adrian. The unspoken rules, the political undercurrents, the way every gesture and choice carried meaning beyond the surface. By the time the party arrived, Elena felt like she'd crammed for an exam in a subject she'd never studied. The venue was a historic building downtown, all marble columns and gilded ceilings, and the kind of old money elegance that money couldn't buy. Elena arrived with Adrian, wearing a dress that probably cost more than her car, deep emerald that Irina had insisted would photograph well and signal both sophistication and boldness. The moment they walked in, every conversation in the room paused. "Remember," Adrian murmured, his hand at the small of her back, "you belong here. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Then they were surrounded. People Elena didn't know offered congratulations that felt like assessments. Women with sharp eyes and sharper smiles asked questions designed to trip her up. Men evaluated her like she was a business acquisition. And through it all, Mikhail watched from across the room, a smile playing at his lips. "Adrian," a voice called. An older man approached, distinguished in the way that came from decades of power. "Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you, Victor." "Wait, Victor?" Elena's confusion must have shown, because the man smiled. "Not that Victor, my dear. I'm Viktor Sokolov. The late Viktor Zharkov was a distant cousin, poor judgment on his part, going after Adrian's interests." The casual mention of the man who'd tried to have her kidnapped, who'd been killed for it, sent ice through Elena's veins. "Elena is still adjusting to our world," Adrian said smoothly. "She comes from a very different background." "How refreshing," Sokolov said, but his eyes were calculating. "We've grown so insular. New blood might be exactly what we need." After he left, Elena turned to Adrian. "That was a test. Everything tonight is a test. And how am I doing?" "You're still standing. That's passing." The evening crawled by. Elena smiled until her face hurt, made small talk until her voice felt hoarse, and navigated conversations that felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. Finally, Mikhail approached. "Elena, you look lovely." "Thank you. I wanted to apologize for the other night. I may have been harsh." "You were honest. I appreciate that." "Did you?" Mikhail's smile didn't waver. "I wonder if Adrian has been equally honest with you." Meaning there are aspects of our business that even those closest to us don't always understand. He glanced at Adrian, who'd been pulled into conversation across the room. "For instance, did he tell you about the expansion into the port district?" Elena kept her expression neutral. "We've discussed his business interests. But has he told you what that expansion requires? The partnerships being formed, the territories being negotiated?" "I'm sure Adrian shares what I need to know." "Of course. But sometimes what we need to know, and what we should know, are different things." Mikhail leaned in slightly. "Be careful, Elena. Love is wonderful, but in our world, it can also be a liability." Before she could respond, Adrian materialized at her side. "Mikhail, enjoying the party?" "Immensely. You've done well for yourself, nephew. Elena is quite formidable." After Mikhail left, Adrian's jaw was tight. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing I couldn't handle." "Elena, he's trying to make me doubt you, to question whether I know what I'm getting into." She turned to face Adrian fully. "But here's what I know. You're dangerous, your world is dangerous, and marrying you means accepting that. I decided that already. Some politician posturing at a party isn't going to change my mind." Something fierce and protective flashed in Adrian's eyes. "I love you." "I know. Now let's finish this party so we can go home." They made it another hour before Adrian declared they'd stayed long enough. As they were leaving, Katerina appeared. "Elena," she said. "A moment?" Adrian tensed, but Elena squeezed his hand. "I'll be right there." She followed Katerina to a quieter corner of the venue. "You did well tonight," Katerina said without preamble. "Thank you. I'm not complimenting you. I'm stating a fact." Katerina studied her. "When Adrian first told me about you, I thought you'd be a phase, a distraction, someone who'd disappear when the reality of our world became too much. And now? Now I think you might actually survive this." She paused. But surviving and thriving are different things. To thrive in our world requires more than love. It requires strength, strategy, and the willingness to do difficult things. I understand that. Do you? Because there will come a time when Adrian can't protect you from every threat. When you'll have to protect yourself, or him, or both. And in those moments, the woman you were before won't be enough. Elena held her gaze. Then I'll become someone else. Katerina's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Adrian chose well. Better than he knows. She left Elena standing there, processing the closest thing to approval she was likely to get from Adrian's mother. The drive home was quiet. Elena stared out the window, exhausted and overwhelmed and strangely exhilarated. You're thinking too loud, Adrian said. Your family is terrifying. I know. Your uncle is actively working against you. I know that too. And your mother just told me I'll have to become someone different to survive your world. Adrian pulled the car over again, apparently his preferred method for important conversations. Is that what you want? To become someone different? Elena considered the question. I don't know, but I think maybe I already am. What do you mean? 3 days ago, I would have been terrified by everything that happened tonight. And I was terrified, but I was also something else. Angry, determined, like I wanted to prove to all of them that I belonged there. You do belong there. Because you say so. Because you held your own against some of the most dangerous people in the city without flinching. He cupped her face. You're stronger than you think. I hope you're right. I'm always right. You're really not. He kissed her then, soft and slow, a promise and a question all at once. When they finally made it back to the penthouse, Elena collapsed on the couch, kicking off shoes that had been slowly murdering her feet all night. Never again, she declared. We have the wedding still. Don't remind me. Adrian sat beside her, pulling her feet into his lap and starting to massage them with surprising skill. Where did you learn to do that? Elena asked. I contain multitudes. That's not an answer. My mother insisted I learn, said a man who couldn't take care of the small things would never manage the large ones. Elena watched him, this complicated man who killed people and drew pictures and apparently gave excellent foot massages. Tell me something true, she said quietly. What do you want to know? Anything, something real about you that isn't about the organization or your family or the danger, just you. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, hands still working on her feet. I wanted to be a musician, he said finally. When I was younger, before everything, I played guitar and wrote songs and thought maybe I could make something beautiful instead of just managing violence. What happened? My father died, and everything else became irrelevant. Do you still play? Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. Will you play for me sometime? Maybe. That means no. That means I'm terrified you'll hear me and realize you've engaged yourself to a mediocre guitarist with delusions of artistic talent. Elena laughed, and it felt good, normal and easy in a way nothing else about their relationship was. I'm sure you're terrible, she said, but I'd still like to hear it. Adrian pulled her closer and she settled against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. We're really doing this, she said. Having second thoughts? Third, fourth, and fifth thoughts. But I'm still here. That's all I need. They sat in the darkness of his penthouse, the city glittering below them, and for the first time in days, Elena felt like she could breathe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Mikhail's machinations, the organization's politics, the constant navigation of a world she was still learning. But right now, in this moment, she had this. Adrian's arms around her, his heart beating against her cheek, and the choice she'd made to stay. It would have to be enough. The nightmare came 3 nights later. Elena woke gasping, the ghost of hands around her throat, the memory of breaking glass echoing in her ears. For a disorienting moment, she was back in her old apartment, watching a shadow move across her living room. Then Adrian's arms were around her, his voice low and steady in the darkness. You're safe. I'm here. You're safe. She pressed her face against his chest, trying to slow her racing heart. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. Don't apologize. His hand moved in slow circles on her back. Same dream? Always the same dream. It had been happening every few nights since the attack, fragments of memory mixed with imagination, creating scenarios worse than what had actually occurred. In some versions, Adrian's men didn't arrive in time. In others, she fought back and lost. The details changed, but the terror was always the same. "Maybe you should talk to someone," Adrian said carefully. "A professional. A therapist? How would that conversation go?" "Hi, I'm engaged to a mafia boss and men broke into my apartment to kidnap me. Can you help me process that?" "There are people who work with situations like ours." "Therapists for crime families? You'd be surprised what exists in this world." Elena pulled back enough to see his face in the dim light filtering through the windows. "Do you see anyone?" "I did, after my father died." "Did it help?" "It kept me from burning everything down, so yes, probably." She settled back against him, considering. "Maybe. After everything calms down." "Things don't really calm down in my world. They just shift to different types of chaos." Encouraging. They lay in silence for a while, and Elena was almost asleep again when Adrian spoke. "I'm sending you somewhere safe." She was awake instantly. "What?" "Just for a few weeks. There's a house upstate, completely secure. You can—" "No." "Elena." "I said no." She sat up, turning on the bedside lamp. "You're trying to hide me away?" "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" Adrian sat up too, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "From whatever Mikhail is planning. He's been too quiet since the engagement party. That means he's working on something. So we deal with it together." "This isn't your fight." "The hell it isn't? I'm wearing your ring. I stood in front of your entire organization and claimed my place. You don't get to send me away the second things get difficult." "It's not about difficulty." "Then what's it about?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing exactly what you did before, deciding what's best for me without actually asking me." Adrian's jaw clenched. "That's not fair, isn't it? 3 months ago you disappeared to protect me. Now you want to ship me off to some safe house. When does it end, Adrian? When do you trust that I can handle your world?" "I do trust you." "No, you don't. You love me. But you don't trust me to stand beside you when things get ugly." The words hung between them, sharp and true. "You're right," Adrian said finally, and the admission seemed to cost him. "You're right. I'm doing the same thing. But Elena, if something happens to you because of me, then it happens. That's the choice I made." "You don't understand what you're saying. Stop telling me what I understand." She was shouting now, months of frustration pouring out. "I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be locked away. I've survived your world so far, I can keep surviving it." "Surviving isn't living. And hiding isn't protecting." They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the argument crackling between them like electricity. "I can't lose you," Adrian said quietly. "Then stop trying to push me away." He reached for her, pulling her into his lap, and she went despite her anger, his forehead pressed against hers. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "How to let you in completely. How to accept that loving you means letting you face the same dangers I do. You learn. We both learn. What if I can't? Then we figure it out together. But Adrian," she pulled back to look at him directly. "I need you to stop making decisions for me. If there's a threat, tell me. If Mikhail's planning something, tell me. Let me choose how to respond. Even if your choice puts you in danger? Especially then." He studied her for a long moment, and she could see him struggling with it, the instinct to protect warring with the promise to include her. "Okay," he said finally, "but if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no hesitation. That's the compromise." "Deal." They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like relief and residual anger and the promise of something stronger than either emotion alone. The next morning, Adrian kept his word. He laid out everything over breakfast: maps, files, photographs. Mikhail's movements over the past month, the meetings he'd been taking, the alliances he was building. "He's consolidating support," Adrian explained, pointing to a series of names Elena didn't recognize. "Small families, mostly. People who feel overlooked or undervalued in the current structure." "What does he want?" "Control. He thinks if he can prove I'm unfit to lead, the council will vote to replace me." "Can they do that?" "Technically, yes. If there's unanimous agreement that the current head is failing in his duties." Elena studied the photographs. Mikhail shaking hands with various men, always in public places, always with that calculating smile. He's building a case against you. And our marriage is part of his evidence. He's going to argue that I've become distracted, that my priorities have shifted away from the organization. So we prove him wrong. How? Elena thought for a moment, an idea forming. What if we don't try to prove him wrong? What if we prove that your priority shifting is actually a strength? I'm not following. Mikhail's argument is that you're too focused on personal matters. But what if that focus is what makes you a better leader? What if loving me, building a life outside the violence, makes you more human, more capable of seeing beyond just power and control? Adrian's expression was skeptical. That's not how people in this world think. Maybe it's how they should think. Elena, hear me out. Your father led through fear, right? Through violence and dominance? Yes. And where did that get him? Dead at 53, surrounded by people who resented him. Adrian flinched, but didn't argue. You're different, Elena continued. You could be different. Lead differently. Show them that strength doesn't have to mean isolation. You're talking about fundamentally changing how the organization operates. I'm talking about you being yourself instead of being your father's shadow. The words landed hard. Adrian stood abruptly, walking to the windows, his shoulders rigid. My father built this organization into what it is today. And you can build it into something better. Or destroy it completely. Elena joined him as the window, taking his hand. You know what I see when I look at you? Not the head of a criminal empire. Not your father's legacy. Just a man who's trying to do right by the people who depend on him while also trying to have something that's his own. Those things are incompatible. They don't have to be. Adrian turned to face her. You really believe that? I believe in you. That's enough for now. He pulled her close, and they stood looking out at the city, both of them knowing that belief alone wouldn't be enough, but choosing to hold on to it anyway. The call came that afternoon. Adrian was in a meeting with some of his lieutenants when his phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Volkov. Adrian, it's Dmitry Kozlov. Adrian's blood went cold. Dmitry Kozlov was the son of the family he'd eliminated in Prague, the son who'd disappeared after the massacre, presumed dead or in hiding. How did you get this number? I have friends, but that's not important. Dmitry's voice was calm, almost pleasant. What's important is that I have something of yours. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Elena Carter, 27 years old, works at a bookstore on 5th, recently engaged to the man who murdered her entire family. Adrian's hand clenched around the phone. If you touch her, I already have. The line went dead. Adrian was moving before he consciously decided to, shouting orders to his men, grabbing his gun, his mind racing through scenarios each more horrifying than the last. He called Elena's phone. No answer. He called the security detail assigned to watch her. No answer. He pulled up the tracking app on his phone, the one Elena didn't know about but that he'd installed anyway, and watched the little dot that represented her location sitting stationary at the bookstore where she'd insisted on working today despite his protests. The drive took 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. His men surrounded the building, weapons drawn, moving with practiced precision. Adrian went through the front door, and the normalcy of it made him want to scream. Customers browsing shelves, Mrs. Chen ringing up a sale, everything exactly as it should be, except Elena wasn't there. Where is she? He demanded, and Mrs. Chen looked up, startled. Elena. She left about an hour ago, said she wasn't feeling well. Did she leave alone? There was a man with her, said he was her brother. Adrian felt the world tilt. She doesn't have a brother. Mrs. Chen's face went white. Oh no, I thought he seemed so concerned about her. But Adrian was already moving, pulling up the security footage on his phone, scanning through until he found it. Elena walking out with a man who had his arm around her shoulders, her expression dazed, clearly drugged. Dmitry had taken her in broad daylight, walked her out of the bookstore like she was just a sick girl being helped home, and no one had thought to question it. Adrian's phone buzzed, a text from the same unknown number. We need to talk about Prague. Come alone or she dies. An address followed. A warehouse district on the waterfront, neutral territory, or what passed for it. Adrian stared at the message, every instinct screaming at him to bring an army, to burn the entire district to the ground until he found her. But he knew Dmitri, knew the kind of man he'd been trained to be, knew that any deviation from the instructions would result in Elena's death. He looked at his second-in-command, a man named Alexei, who'd served his father and now served him. "I'm going alone." That's suicide. That's the only option that keeps her alive. "Adrian, you have your orders. If I'm not back in 3 hours, you know what to do." Alexei's expression was grim, but he nodded. Adrian drove to the waterfront, every second stretching into eternity. The warehouse was exactly what he expected, abandoned, isolated, perfect for an ambush. He walked in with his hands visible, gun holstered, looking for any sign of life. "Dmitri," he called. "I'm here. Let her go." Movement in the shadows. Then Dmitri stepped into view and Adrian's chest constricted. He looked so much like his father. Same dark eyes, same sharp features. Except his father had been a man in his prime when Adrian killed him. Dmitri was barely 25, still young enough to have his whole life ahead of him, a life Adrian had destroyed. "You came," Dmitri said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Where is she?" Dmitri gestured, and 2 men appeared, dragging Elena between them. She was conscious, but barely, head lolling, feet dragging. Everything in Adrian wanted to rush forward, to tear apart anyone who'd laid hands on her. But he forced himself to stay still. "Let her go," he said carefully. "Whatever you want, we can discuss it. But let her go first." "Whatever I want," Dmitri laughed, bitter and broken. "You killed my entire family, my father, my mother, my sister. Do you remember her name?" Adrian did. Katya, 16 years old. She'd been sleeping when his men came. "I remember," he said quietly. "Do you? Or was she just another casualty in your rise to power?" "She was a child, and I have regretted her death every day since. Regret doesn't bring her back. No, it doesn't." Dmitri pulled out a gun, pressing it to Elena's temple. She whimpered, the sound cutting through Adrian like a knife. "How does it feel?" Dmitri asked. "Knowing you're about to lose someone you love? Knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it? If you kill her, you'll never leave this building alive. I know. But at least you'll understand what you took from me." Adrian's mind raced, calculating angles, options, anything that would get Elena out of this alive. "You want revenge," he said. "I understand that. I'd want the same thing. But Elena had nothing to do with Prague. She didn't even know me then. She knows you now. She chose you. That makes her complicit. She's innocent. So was Katya." The truth of it hung between them, brutal and inescapable. "You're right," Adrian said, and watched Dmitri's eyes widen in surprise. "You're absolutely right. Your sister was innocent. Your family was innocent. And I killed them anyway because that's what this world taught me to do. That's what my father taught me. I don't want your excuses. I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you the truth. I was 24 years old and terrified of failing, of being seen as weak, of losing the only thing I had left after my father died. So when your father challenged our territory, I did what I thought I had to do. I eliminated the threat. You murdered children." "Yes." The word was raw, honest. "Yes, I did. And I have to live with that every single day. But Dmitri..." Adrian took a step forward, hands still visible. "Killing Elena won't bring your sister back. It won't undo Prague. It'll just create more death. Maybe that's what this world needs. More death, until there's no one left to keep this cycle going. Maybe, or maybe we could choose something different." "Like what?" "Like letting her go. Letting yourself walk away. Building a life somewhere far from all of this." Dmitri's laugh was hollow. "You think I can just walk away after everything? I think revenge doesn't end. It just keeps going until everyone's dead or broken. And I think you're smart enough to know that." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Elena's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Adrian with an expression that broke his heart. "Adrian," she whispered. "I'm here," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm right here." Dmitri looked between them, and something shifted in his expression. "You really love her?" "Yes." Enough to die for her? Yes. Prove it. Dmitri pulled the gun away from Elena's head and pointed it at Adrian. Get on your knees. Adrian knelt without hesitation. You're just going to let me execute you? If it means she lives, yes. Elena made a sound of protest, struggling against the men holding her, but she was too drugged to fight effectively. Dmitri approached slowly, gun steady, and Adrian could see his hand trembling slightly. He was trying to work up the courage to pull the trigger. Do it, Adrian said quietly. Take your revenge. Just let her go first. Why should I believe you'll let her go? Because I give you my word. And because I think, under different circumstances, we could have understood each other. Dmitri's jaw clenched. The gun pressed against Adrian's forehead, cold and final. I wanted to hate you, Dmitri said. I've spent 5 years planning this moment, imagining how good it would feel to watch you beg, to see you suffer the way my family suffered. And now? Now I just feel tired. The gun lowered slightly. I can't let you go, Dmitri continued. Everyone would see it as weakness. They'd come after me, after anyone I cared about. This is the only way it ends. Then end it, Adrian said. But let Elena walk out of here first. Dmitri studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded to his men. Let her go. Dmitri, one of them protested. I said let her go. They released Elena, and she stumbled forward, falling to her knees beside Adrian. No, she said, her voice slurred but determined. No, I'm not leaving you. Elena, you need to go. I won't. Please. Adrian turned to look at her, memorizing her face. Please, just go. Live your life. Be happy. Not without you. You don't have a choice. Actually, a new voice said from the shadows. She does. Mikhail emerged from the darkness, flanked by a dozen armed men. Adrian's heart sank. This was it. The move Mikhail had been planning. He'd somehow learned about Dmitri, had probably helped orchestrate this whole thing, and now he was here to watch Adrian fall. But Mikhail wasn't looking at Adrian. He was looking at Dmitri. Dmitri Kozlov, Mikhail said. I'm disappointed. I expected better planning from you. This doesn't concern you, old man. Oh, but it does. You see, my nephew may be young and occasionally foolish, but he's still family. And in our world, family means something. Adrian's mind reeled. Mikhail was helping him? Besides, Mikhail continued, if anyone's going to remove Adrian from power, it'll be through legitimate channels, not some revenge-driven child playing at being dangerous. Dmitri's face hardened. Get out. This is between me and Volkov. No, I don't think so. Mikhail gestured, and his men raised their weapons. You have 2 options. Walk away now, alive, with enough money to start over somewhere far from here, or die in this warehouse, another casualty of a vendetta that should have ended years ago. You think you can just buy me off? I think you're smart enough to recognize when you're outmaneuvered. My men have been in position for the last 20 minutes. If you'd pulled that trigger, you'd have been dead before Adrian's body hit the ground. The standoff stretched, tension crackling through the warehouse. Finally, Dmitri lowered his gun completely. How much money? Mikhail named a figure that made even Adrian's eyebrows rise. And if I refuse? Then my men open fire, and we all pretend this conversation never happened. Dmitri looked at Adrian, still kneeling with Elena beside him. You're lucky you have family that cares about you. Mine is all dead because of decisions I couldn't control. I know, Adrian said, and I'm sorry. It doesn't change anything, but I am sorry. Sorry doesn't matter in this world. No, it doesn't. Dmitri holstered his gun. I want the money within 24 hours, and I never want to see any of you again. Done, Mikhail said. Dmitri and his men left, and the warehouse fell into heavy silence. Adrian helped Elena to her feet, checking her for injuries even though he knew the danger had passed. Are you hurt? Drugged, but okay. She swayed, and he caught her. You were going to let him kill you. To save you, yes. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Probably, Mikhail cleared his throat. As touching as this is, we should leave before someone calls the police about the heavily armed men in the warehouse. Adrian turned to face his uncle. Why did you help me? Because despite what you think, I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm trying to make you stronger. Mikhail's expression was unreadable. And because Katerina would never forgive me if I let her only son die in some warehouse over a 5-year-old grudge. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still need to discuss your leadership, but that's a conversation for another day. He paused. Take care of your girl. She looks like she's about to fall over. Mikhail and his men left, and Adrian was alone with Elena in the empty warehouse. Can you walk? He asked. I can try. He ended up carrying her to the car, and she was unconscious before they even left the parking lot. The drive back to the penthouse was a blur, adrenaline fading, leaving behind exhaustion and the crushing weight of how close he'd come to losing everything. The building's medical team was waiting when they arrived, checking Elena's vitals, confirming she'd been dosed with a powerful sedative but would be fine once it wore off. Adrian sat beside her bed, holding her hand, and tried to process everything that had happened. Dmitri's face, Katya's name, the gun against his forehead, the certainty that he was about to die. And Mikhail saving him instead of letting him fall. His phone buzzed. A message from his uncle. The council wants a meeting. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Be ready. Adrian stared at the message, understanding what it meant. The reckoning was coming. Elena woke to sunlight and the worst headache of her life. For a moment, she couldn't remember why her skull felt like it was splitting open. Then it came back in fragments. The bookstore. A man's concerned face. The sickly sweet smell of something chemical. Adrian kneeling with a gun to his head. She sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it. Easy. Adrian was there instantly, steadying her. The doctor said the sedative would leave you with a nasty hangover. Hangover is an understatement. Her mouth tasted like metal and regret. How long was I out? 18 hours. 18. She looked at the windows, the afternoon light, and felt disoriented all over again. What happened after the warehouse? Mikhail's men escorted Dmitri to the airport. He's gone. As of this morning, he's someone else's problem in a country without an extradition treaty. Elena absorbed this, her memories of the warehouse still hazy. He was going to kill you. Yes, and you were going to let him. To save you, yes. She looked at him, really looked at him. The exhaustion in his face, the tension he was barely holding back, the way his hand shook slightly when he handed her a glass of water. You're an idiot, she said. Probably. I mean it. What kind of plan was that? Trade your life for mine and hope everything works out? It wasn't a plan. It was the only option. It was a terrible option. It was the only one that kept you alive. They glared at each other, both of them breathing hard, the argument covering up the terror they'd both felt. I thought I lost you, Elena said finally, her voice breaking. I woke up just enough to see that gun pointed at your head, and I thought... Adrian pulled her close, and she buried her face in his shoulder, trying not to cry and failing. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's not your fault. It's entirely my fault. Dmitri took you because of me, because of what I did in Prague. Elena pulled back enough to see his face. Tell me about Prague. All of it. Elena, you said we were going to be honest with each other, so be honest. What happened? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walking to the window, and when he spoke his voice was flat, detached. The Kozlov family controlled shipping routes through Eastern Europe. My father wanted those routes. He spent 2 years trying to negotiate, but Alexei Kozlov wouldn't budge. When my father got sick, the Kozlovs saw it as weakness. They started moving into our territory, undercutting our prices, stealing our contracts. So you went to war. I went to Prague with a team. The plan was to make an example, hit them hard enough that they'd retreat. But when we got there, he paused, and Elena could see the muscle in his jaw working. Alexei was armed. His wife was armed. His oldest son was armed. But his daughter, Katya, she was just a kid, 16. She heard the gunfire and came downstairs. What happened? One of my men panicked, shot her before I could stop him. And then I made a decision. We couldn't leave witnesses who knew our faces, knew who we were, so I gave the order. His voice was hollow. Alexei's other children, his wife, the household staff, everyone. Elena felt sick. How many people? 11, including Katya. The number hung in the air between them. After that, the Kozlov organization fell apart. No leadership, no structure. We absorbed what was left, took the shipping routes, and everyone in our world understood what happened. That I was willing to do what my father had always done, that I was just as ruthless. But you weren't, Elena said quietly. You were terrified and desperate and trying to prove something. Does that make it better? No, but it makes it human. Adrian turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was raw. I've done things I can't take back, killed people who didn't deserve it, made decisions that haunt me, and I'll probably do more terrible things before this is over. Can you live with that? Elena thought about it, really thought about it. Not the sanitized version where she told herself love conquered all, but the reality of what it meant to be with someone who had blood on his hands. I don't know, she said honestly, but I know I'm not walking away. That's not the same thing as saying yes. It's the best I can do right now. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth of it. Elena's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up to find a message from Mrs. Chen. The police came by asking about you. I told them you quit and moved. Hope that was right. The police, Elena said. They're asking questions about me. I know, Alexei's handling it. How do you handle the police asking about a kidnapping? Very carefully and expensively. Elena set down the phone. This is my life now. Police asking questions, people getting paid off, constantly looking over my shoulder. Yes. And the council meeting tonight? What's that about? Adrian's expression shuddered. How did you know about that? I heard you on the phone earlier, before I fully woke up. She studied his face. They're going to vote on whether you keep your position. It's a possibility. What happens if they vote against you? Then Mikhail becomes head of the organization, and I become a liability. The casual way he said it made her stomach clench. A liability? You mean... I mean that people in my position who lose power tend not to survive long. Too much knowledge, too much potential for revenge. So we need to make sure you don't lose. There's no we in this. I go alone. Like hell you do. Elena, I'm serious. If they're voting on your leadership, they need to see that I'm not a distraction, that I'm a strength. You want to come to a council meeting where the heads of the 5 families will be evaluating whether I'm fit to lead? Yes. That's insane. Welcome to my life now. She stood, ignoring the way her head spun. What do I need to know? Adrian stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You can barely stand. I'll manage. Now tell me about the council. He recognized when he had lost an argument. 5 families make up the council. Mine, obviously. The Petrovs, who control the financial sector. The Morozovs, who handle enforcement and security. The Belovs, who run the political connections, and the Orlovs, who manage the international operations. And Mikhail is a wild card. Technically, he's part of the Volkov family, so he doesn't get a separate vote. But he has influence. If he's been building alliances like I think he has, he could sway the council against me. What's the vote about specifically? My fitness to lead. Whether the choices I've made recently, he gestured vaguely, and Elena knew he meant her. Demonstrate poor judgment or dangerous distraction. So we prove them wrong. How? Elena thought for a moment. By showing them that having something to protect makes you stronger, not weaker. That you're not just maintaining your father's empire, you're building something better. That's a nice speech, but these people don't care about better. They care about power and profit. Then we show them how our marriage serves both. Adrian's expression was skeptical, but he didn't argue. They spent the afternoon preparing. Adrian walked her through the key players, who could be trusted, who was loyal to Mikhail, who would vote based on pure self-interest. Elena listened, memorizing names and faces, understanding that tonight could determine everything. By the time they needed to leave, Elena had changed into a dress that Irina had sent over. Deep navy, conservative but commanding. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Ready? Adrian asked from the doorway. No, but let's go anyway. The council meeting was held in a private room at an exclusive club downtown. The kind of place that didn't advertise, where membership was invitation only and everyone knew everyone else's secrets. They arrived to find the other council members already assembled, 4 men in expensive suits, each representing decades of accumulated power. Dmitry Petrov was the oldest, probably in his 70s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Sergei Morozov was younger, built like he'd done his own enforcement work before rising to leadership. Alexei Belov was smooth and political, already smiling and greeting. And Viktor Orlov, the same Viktor who'd congratulated them at the engagement party, watched them enter with an expression Elena couldn't read. Mikhail sat slightly apart from the others, positioned like he was observing rather than participating. "Adrian," Dmitry Petrov said, "and this must be your fiancée. How unexpected that you'd bring her." "Elena is part of my life. If the council has concerns about my judgment, she should be here." "How very modern of you." Petrov's tone suggested that wasn't a compliment. They took their seats at the table. Adrian at one end, the council members along the sides, Elena beside Adrian in a chair that had clearly been added last minute. "Let's begin," Petrov said. "We're here because concerns have been raised about your leadership, Adrian. Specifically, whether personal matters have compromised your ability to serve the organization's interests." "I'm aware of the concerns," Adrian said calmly, "and I'm prepared to address them." "Are you prepared to address the fact that your relationship has already resulted in violence?" This from Sergei Morozov. "The incident with Dmitry Kozlov put our entire operation at risk. If Mikhail hadn't intervened, I would have handled it myself," Adrian interrupted. "The situation was under control." "Under control?" Morozov laughed harshly. "You were about to be executed in a warehouse." "I was ensuring Elena's safety. That was my priority." "And that's exactly the problem," Alexei Belov said, his voice smooth as oil. "Your priorities have shifted away from the organization. A leader who puts personal concerns above business concerns is a liability." "Is that what you think?" Adrian asked quietly. "That caring about someone makes me weak?" "It makes you vulnerable," Viktor Orlov said. "And in our world, vulnerability is fatal." Elena had been quiet until now, letting Adrian defend himself. But she could see where this was going. They'd already made up their minds. They were just going through the motions. "May I say something?" she asked. The room fell silent. Clearly, they hadn't expected her to speak. "You're all looking at this wrong," Elena continued. "You think Adrian caring about me makes him weaker. But have any of you considered that it might make him stronger?" "How do you figure that, Ms. Carter?" Petrov asked. "Because he has something to lose now. Before, what did he have? Power? Sure. Control. But no real stakes beyond maintaining what his father built. Now he has a future. A reason to be strategic instead of just ruthless." "That's an interesting theory," Belov said. "But it doesn't address the fundamental issue. You're a vulnerability. An opening for our enemies. I'm also an asset. I see things from outside your world. I can help Adrian navigate situations differently than his father would have." "You mean make him soft," Morozov said bluntly. "I mean make him human. There's a difference." Mikhail spoke for the first time. "And what if being human gets him killed? Gets all of us exposed?" Elena turned to face him directly. "Then you'll have been right, and you can vote him out. But if you vote him out now, based on fear instead of evidence, you're not protecting the organization. You're just maintaining the status quo because it's comfortable." "Comfortable has kept us alive for 30 years, Mikhail said. "And it's also what's killing you slowly," Elena shot back. "All of you, you're so focused on maintaining power that you've forgotten to ask what the power is for." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Dmitry Petrov spoke. "You have courage, I'll give you that. But courage doesn't pay bills or keep territories secure." "No," Adrian said, taking back control of the conversation. "But strategy does. And my strategy has been working. Revenue is up across all sectors. We've expanded into 3 new markets. Our political connections have never been stronger. The only people questioning my leadership are in this room, because we see the danger you're courting," Belov said. "You see change, and change terrifies you." Adrian stood, and Elena stood with him. "My father ruled through fear, through violence, and it worked for a time, but that time is ending. The world is changing. Law enforcement is getting smarter. Technology is making it harder to hide. If we don't adapt, we die." "And your fiancée is part of this adaptation?" Petrov asked. "She's part of my life, which means she's part of how I lead." If you can't accept that, then vote me out. Replace me with Mikhail, who'll give you more of the same until it stops working and we all end up in prison or dead. The challenge hung in the air. Or, Adrian continued, you can trust that I know what I'm doing, that loving someone doesn't make me weak, it makes me calculated. Because now I have something worth protecting beyond just power. Mikhail stood slowly. You've made your position clear, Adrian, and I respect it, but I think it's time the council voted. Agreed, Petrov said. All in favor of maintaining Adrian Volkov as head of the organization? Viktor Orlov raised his hand immediately. Belov hesitated, then raised his. Morozov sat stone-faced for a long moment before finally, grudgingly, raising his hand. That left Petrov and Mikhail. Petrov studied Adrian for what felt like an eternity. Then he raised his hand. Everyone looked at Mikhail. I abstain, he said simply. Adrian's eyes narrowed. That's not how this works. It's exactly how it works. I'm not voting against you, but I'm also not endorsing this path. Consider it conditional support. Conditional on what? On you proving me wrong. Mikhail's expression was unreadable. I hope you do, Adrian. For all our sakes. The meeting adjourned shortly after, the council members filing out with various expressions of concern and reluctant acceptance. Elena and Adrian were left alone in the room. You kept your position, Elena said. Barely, and with Mikhail's abstention hanging over it like a sword. But you won. For now. They walked to the car in silence, both processing what had just happened. Elena felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the lingering effects of the sedative. Thank you, Adrian said as they pulled away from the club. For what? For speaking up, for defending me when I couldn't defend myself. You were defending yourself fine. I just added context. You told them they were afraid of change. No one said that to the council in decades. Well, they are. Adrian's mouth curved slightly. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. They drove through the city, and Elena watched the lights blur past, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. The kidnapping, the warehouse, the council meeting. Her old life felt like a distant memory. What happens now? She asked. Now we get married. Just like that? Just like that. The council approved our engagement by not voting against me. If we wait, if we delay, it looks like doubt. We need to move forward. How soon? This weekend. Elena's head spun. This weekend? As in 3 days from now? Yes. Adrian, that's insane. We can't plan a wedding in 3 days. We don't need to plan anything. My mother already has. Of course she had. Elena laughed, slightly hysterical but genuine. Your mother planned our wedding without asking us? She started the day after I proposed. Apparently she's been waiting years for me to settle down. And you're okay with this? I'm okay with marrying you. The details don't matter. Elena looked at him. This complicated, dangerous, impossible man who'd just fought to keep his position so he could build a life with her. Okay, she said. Okay. Let's get married this weekend. Adrian pulled the car over, again with the pulling over for important moments, and kissed her hard enough to make her forget they were parked illegally on a busy street. I love you, he said against her mouth. I know. That's not the response you're supposed to give. I love you too, you controlling, overprotective, occasionally homicidal idiot. Better. They made it back to the penthouse and collapsed on the couch, both too exhausted to even make it to the bedroom. 3 days, Elena said, staring at the ceiling. In 3 days, I'll be Elena Volkov. Having second thoughts? Third, fourth, and fifth thoughts. But I'm still here. That's all I need. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Congratulations on surviving the council. Katerina would like to see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't be late. Your mother wants to see me tomorrow. Adrian groaned. Of course she does. Should I be worried? Terrified, probably. But she likes you, in her own way. How can you tell? She hasn't tried to have you killed? For my mother, that's basically approval. Elena laughed, and it felt good. Normal and easy in a way nothing else about their relationship was. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, And for the first time in days, Elena didn't dream about breaking glass or hands around her throat. She dreamed about a wedding in 3 days, and a future she couldn't quite imagine but was choosing anyway. The next morning, Elena arrived at Katerina's estate exactly at 10, wearing what she hoped was appropriate for meeting her future mother-in-law. Katerina was in the garden, cutting roses with the kind of precision that suggested she approached everything in life with the same calculated care. "Elena," she said without looking up. "On time. Good. You said not to be late." "Most people still are." Katerina set down her shears and finally looked at Elena properly. "You spoke well at the council meeting. You were there?" "Of course not, but I have people who report to me." She gestured to a bench. "Sit." Elena sat, feeling like she was back in school being called to the principal's office. "Adrian's father was a great man," Katerina began. "Ruthless, brilliant, and utterly incapable of seeing beyond the immediate exercise of power. He built an empire, but he never built a legacy." "I'm not sure I understand the difference." "An empire is held by force. A legacy is something that survives generations." Katerina turned to face her fully. "Adrian has the chance to build something his father never could, but only if he has the right partner." "And you think I'm the right partner?" "I think you're brave enough to tell the council they're cowards, which is either monumentally stupid or exactly what this family needs." She paused. "Time will tell which." "That's not exactly a ringing endorsement." "I don't do ringing endorsements. I do honesty." Katerina pulled out a small box from her pocket. "This was my mother's. She wore it when she married my father. I wore it when I married Adrian's father. And now I'd like you to wear it when you marry my son." She opened the box to reveal a delicate platinum bracelet, inlaid with diamonds and sapphires. "Katerina, I can't. You can, and you will. Consider it a wedding gift, and a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That you're part of this family now, with all the protection and danger that entails." Elena took the box carefully, studying the bracelet. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a piece of history she was now responsible for carrying forward. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. Being a Volkov woman is not easy. My husband was murdered. My son lives in constant danger, and now you're choosing to join us anyway." "I love him." "I know, but love isn't always enough." Katerina's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "However, love combined with intelligence and courage might be. We'll see." They sat in the garden for another hour, Katerina walking Elena through what to expect at the wedding, who would be there, what it all meant politically. "Everyone will be watching you," Katerina explained, "how you carry yourself, how you interact with Adrian, whether you show fear or strength. This wedding isn't just a ceremony, it's a statement." "I'm starting to understand that." "Good. Then you'll also understand that once you say those vows, there's no going back. You'll be a Volkov, and Volkovs don't run. I'm not planning to run." "We'll see," Katerina said again, but this time it almost sounded like approval. Elena left the estate with the bracelet in her purse and a growing sense of what she was actually stepping into. This wasn't just a marriage. It was a transformation. She met Adrian for lunch at a quiet restaurant, and he immediately noticed something was different. "What did my mother say to you?" "That being a Volkov woman is difficult, and I might not survive it." "That sounds like her." "She also gave me this." Elena showed him the bracelet. Adrian's eyes widened. "That was my grandmother's." "Your mother said I should wear it at the wedding." "That's—" He seemed genuinely moved. "That means she approves. She's never given that to anyone." "Should I be honored or terrified?" "Both, probably." They ordered food neither of them ate, too focused on the reality that in 2 days they'd be married. "Are you sure about this?" Adrian asked. "Because if you want to wait, if you need more time—" "I don't need more time. I need to stop thinking and just do it before I talk myself out of it." Encouraging. "I'm serious. The more I think about all the reasons this is crazy, the more I'll panic. So let's just get married and figure out the rest as we go." Adrian reached across the table, taking her hand. "That might be the worst marriage philosophy I've ever heard." "You have a better one?" "Not even a little bit." They laughed, and for a moment everything felt possible. The rest of the day passed in a blur of final preparations. Elena met with Irina one last time to finalize the dress, a simple but stunning design in ivory silk that somehow managed to look both elegant and understated. She signed documents she barely understood, but that made their marriage legally binding in ways that extended far beyond normal matrimonial law. And she tried very hard not to think about the fact that in 48 hours, her entire life would change irreversibly. That night, lying in bed beside Adrian, she finally asked the question that had been haunting her. What if I'm not strong enough for this? Then we'll figure it out together. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He pulled her closer. Elena, I can't promise you this will be easy. I can't promise you won't regret it sometimes. But I can promise you that whatever comes, we face it together. Together, she repeated, testing the word. Together. She fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat, steady and sure, and dreamed of a future that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. In 2 days, she would become Elena Volkov, and there would be no going back. The morning of her wedding, Elena woke up alone. She found a note on Adrian's pillow, his handwriting sharp and precise. Tradition says, I'm not supposed to see you before the ceremony. My mother insisted. I'll be waiting at the end of the aisle. Don't be late. I love you. Elena held the note for a long moment, then got out of bed and tried not to think about the fact that in 6 hours, she'd be married to a man who ordered executions and drew pictures of her when he couldn't sleep. Irina arrived at 8 with a team of people Elena didn't know. Hair, makeup, someone whose only job seemed to be managing the dress. They descended on the penthouse like a well-organized invasion force. Breathe, Irina instructed as someone started working on Elena's hair. You look like you're about to pass out. I might be. You won't. I've seen dozens of brides far more nervous than you. Were any of them marrying into a crime family? Irina's smile was knowing. More than you'd think. The transformation took hours. Elena sat still while hands shaped and painted and adjusted, turning her into someone who looked like they belonged in Adrian's world. When they finally let her look in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly. Ivory silk that draped like water, simple enough to avoid ostentation, but elegant enough to command attention. Her hair was swept back in a style that was both classic and modern. And Katerina's bracelet glinted at her wrist, a reminder of the legacy she was joining. You look beautiful, Irina said. I look terrified. That too, but mostly beautiful. There was a knock at the door, and Katerina entered, already dressed for the ceremony in midnight blue that made her look regal and slightly intimidating. Everyone out, she said, and the team disappeared immediately. Katerina studied Elena for a long moment. You'll do. High praise. I don't give praise I don't mean. Katerina moved closer, adjusting the bracelet slightly. I want to tell you something before you walk down that aisle. Okay, marriage in our world is not like marriage in yours. It's a partnership, yes, but it's also a strategy, a statement, a weapon when necessary. I'm starting to understand that. Good. But here's what most people don't understand. It can also be a refuge. A place where you're honest when you can't be honest anywhere else. My husband and I had that. Not always, not perfectly. But in the moments that mattered, Elena felt her throat tighten. Did you love him? Desperately. Even when I hated him. Even when his choices put us all in danger. Katerina's expression softened. Adrian is like his father in many ways, but he's also different. He has the capacity to choose differently, to build something beyond just power. And you think I can help him do that? I think you're already helping him do that. The question is whether you're strong enough to keep doing it when it gets harder. I don't know if I am. None of us do. We just keep going anyway. Katerina squeezed her hand briefly. Welcome to the family, Elena. Try not to get yourself killed. Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone with her reflection and 6 hours of preparation condensed into a single moment of choice. The ceremony was being held at the Volkov estate, in a garden that had been transformed into something out of a dream. White roses everywhere, strings of lights even though it was daytime, chairs arranged in neat rows for the 100 guests who represented the entirety of Adrian's world. Elena stood at the entrance to the garden, her hand on Alexei's arm. Adrian had asked his second-in-command to walk her down the aisle, since her own father had died years ago and there was no one else who made sense. "Ready?" Alexei asked. "Not even a little bit." "Good. The best decisions are the ones that scare you." The music started, something classical that Elena didn't recognize but that seemed appropriate for the moment. She took a breath, and then she was walking, one step at a time, past faces she'd seen at the engagement party and the council meeting and probably a dozen other places she couldn't remember. And at the end of the aisle, waiting with an expression that was equal parts terrified and awed, was Adrian. He wore a black suit because, of course he did, but there was something different about him today, more open, more vulnerable, like he'd taken off some of the armor he usually wore. When Elena reached him, Alexei stepped back, and she was alone with Adrian and the officiant and 100 people watching their every move. "You look beautiful," Adrian whispered. "You look scared." "I am scared." "Good, me too." The officiant began speaking, traditional words about love and commitment and partnership, and Elena tried to focus on them instead of the surreal reality of what she was doing. Then came the vows. "Elena Carter," Adrian said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I can't promise you an easy life. I can't promise you safety or normalcy or anything resembling the future you probably imagined for yourself. But I can promise you honesty. I can promise you that I will fight for you, protect you, and choose you every single day for the rest of my life. I can promise you that loving you has made me better than I was, and that I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." Elena's hands were shaking as she took her turn. "Adrian Volkov, 3 months ago, I thought walking away from you was the hardest thing I'd ever do. I was wrong. This is harder, standing here, choosing this life, knowing exactly what it means and doing it anyway. But I also know that I'd rather face danger with you than safety with anyone else. I'd rather build something real in your complicated world than pretend to be happy in a simple one. So I promise you honesty in return. I promise to stand beside you, to challenge you when you're wrong, and to choose you even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." The officiant pronounced them married, and Adrian kissed her like they were the only two people in the garden. The reception was a blur of faces and congratulations and political theater disguised as celebration. Elena shook hands with people whose names she'd never remember, smiled until her face hurt, and tried to ignore the fact that several of the guests were probably armed. Mikhail approached during dinner, his expression unreadable as always. "Congratulations," he said. "You've officially joined the family." "Thank you, I think." "Take it as you will." He paused. "I want you to know something. I abstained at the council meeting not because I don't support Adrian, but because I wanted him to prove he could lead without my vote guaranteeing it." "And did he?" "He kept his position, didn't he? Though I suspect you had something to do with that." "I just said what needed to be said." "Yes, and that's exactly what he needs. Someone willing to say what needs to be said instead of what he wants to hear." Mikhail's expression softened slightly. "My brother, Adrian's father, he surrounded himself with yes-men. It made him powerful but also isolated. Don't let Adrian make the same mistake." "I won't." "Good. Then maybe this family has a future after all." He walked away, leaving Elena processing the closest thing to approval she was likely to get from him. The evening wore on, and eventually Adrian pulled her away from the crowd, leading her to a quiet corner of the garden. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I've shaken more hands today than in my entire life." "Welcome to my world." "Our world now." Adrian smiled. "Our world." I like the sound of that. They stood in the darkness, listening to the distant sound of music and conversation, and Elena felt the weight of the day settling over her. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, we have a honeymoon." "Adrian, I don't think we can just leave." "Watch me. I've arranged everything. 2 weeks in Greece. No phones, no business, no organization. Just us. You can't just disappear for 2 weeks. I can, and I will. Alexei can handle things. And if the council has a problem with it, they can vote me out when we get back." Elena laughed. "You're serious?" "Completely. We're getting on a plane tomorrow morning, and I'm going to spend 2 weeks pretending I'm just a man on vacation with his wife instead of a crime boss? I was going to say someone who has to think about territories and alliances, but sure, crime boss works too." They returned to the reception eventually, dancing and smiling and playing the part of the happy newlyweds, which wasn't difficult, because underneath all the politics and danger, they were actually happy. By the time the last guest left, it was well past midnight. Elena and Adrian stood in the empty garden, surrounded by the debris of celebration. "We're married," Elena said, testing the words. "We're married," Adrian confirmed. "This is insane. Completely. I have no idea what I'm doing." "Neither do I." Elena turned to face him. "But we're doing it anyway. Together." They went back to the penthouse, their penthouse now, Elena realized, and collapsed on the couch still in their wedding clothes. "I can't believe your mother planned all of that in 3 days," Elena said. "She's terrifyingly efficient. It was beautiful, though." "You were beautiful." Adrian pulled her closer. "Are beautiful. Present tense. Smooth. I have my moments." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both too exhausted to move but not ready for the day to end. "Tell me something true," Elena said finally, "something you haven't told anyone else." Adrian thought for a moment. "I'm terrified of becoming my father." "You're nothing like your father." "How do you know? You never met him." "Because you're sitting here worried about becoming him. Your father wouldn't have cared." Adrian was quiet, processing that. "What about you? Tell me something true." "I'm terrified of losing myself in your world, of waking up one day and not recognizing who I've become." "Then we make a promise, right now. We don't let that happen." "How do we prevent it?" "We check in with each other. We stay honest. We remember that we're more than just our roles in this world." Elena nodded slowly. "Okay. Deal." They sealed it with a kiss, and for the first time since agreeing to marry Adrian, Elena felt like she could actually breathe. The honeymoon in Greece was everything Adrian had promised. 2 weeks of sun and sea, and pretending they were normal people instead of a mafia boss and his new wife. They swam in crystal clear water, ate food that tasted like sunshine, and talked about everything except the organization. On their last night, sitting on a balcony overlooking the Mediterranean, Adrian brought up the future. "I've been thinking," he said carefully. "Dangerous. I want to make some changes to how we operate." Elena set down her wine glass. "What kind of changes?" "I want to legitimize more of the business, move away from some of the more violent aspects, build something sustainable." "Your council will fight you on that." "I know, but I think it's necessary, and I think you were right about showing them that having something to protect makes me stronger, not weaker." "What brought this on?" "You did. This did." He gestured between them. "I realize that I don't want to spend the rest of my life constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next threat. I want to build something that lasts, something I can be proud of." "That's a nice dream." But dreams and reality are different things. Your world doesn't exactly reward people who want to go legitimate." "Then I'll have to change the world." Elena studied him. This man who'd ordered deaths and now wanted to build something better. "You really think you can do that? With you beside me?" "Maybe." They returned to reality 3 days later, landing back in the city to find that the world had kept turning in their absence. Alexei met them at the airport with a file of urgent matters that needed attention. "Can't this wait until tomorrow?" Adrian asked. "Unfortunately, no. We have a situation." They went straight to the penthouse, where Alexei laid out the problem. A territorial dispute with a neighboring organization that was threatening to escalate into open conflict. "What do they want?" Adrian asked, scanning the reports. "They want the port district. They're claiming we've been encroaching on their territory." "We have been, because it was part of the agreement after—" He stopped, glancing at Elena. "After Prague," she finished. "I know about Prague, Alexei. Adrian told me." Alexei looked surprised but didn't comment. "Either way, they want a meeting. Tomorrow. Set it up, but I want double security. And Elena stays here." "Actually," Elena said, "I'd like to come." Both men stared at her. "Why?" Adrian asked. "Because if I'm going to be part of this world, I need to understand how it works. All of it. Not just the sanitized version you show me." "Elena, these meetings can get dangerous." "I'll stay in the car with security, but I want to be there. I want to see what you actually do." Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Okay, but you follow Alexei's instructions exactly, no exceptions. The meeting was held in a warehouse, because apparently that was just where important conversations happened in Adrian's world, and Elena watched from an armored SUV as Adrian and Alexei went inside. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see the body language. Tense, aggressive. The kind of posturing that suggested violence was always just one wrong word away. It lasted 45 minutes. When Adrian emerged, he looked exhausted but satisfied. Well? Elena asked as he slid into the car. We reached an agreement. They keep their territory, we keep ours, and we split the profits on any joint ventures. That's it? No violence? Not today. Though there was a moment where I thought Alexei might shoot someone. I didn't, Alexei said from the front seat. But it was close. They drove back to the penthouse, and Elena processed what she'd witnessed. The negotiations, the barely controlled aggression, the constant awareness that everything could explode at any moment. Is it always like that? She asked Adrian later. More or less. Some days are worse. And you do that every day? Several times a day, usually. Elena tried to imagine living like that. Constant tension, constant threat, never fully relaxing. How do you not go insane? I have you now. That helps. It was a sweet sentiment, but Elena wasn't sure it was enough. Over the next few weeks, she watched Adrian navigate his world with a skill that was impressive and exhausting. He mediated disputes, made deals, handled threats, and somehow managed to keep everyone in line. But she also saw the toll it took. The late nights, the stress headaches, the way he never fully relaxed even in his own home. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Elena found him on the balcony, staring out at the city. Rough day? She asked. The Morozovs are pushing back on the legitimization plan. They think it's going to cost them too much money. Are they right? Short term? Yes. Long term, it's the only way we survive. But try explaining long-term thinking to people who've built their entire lives on immediate power. Elena joined him at the railing. What if you can't convince them? Then I push it through anyway, and deal with the fallout. That could cost you your position. I know. They stood in silence for a while, both of them understanding that they were approaching a crossroads. I have an idea, Elena said finally, but you're going to think it's crazy. Most of your ideas are crazy. That's why they work. What if we started something separate from the organization? Something completely legitimate that shows what you're trying to build? Like what? I don't know yet. But something that creates jobs, helps the community, builds goodwill. Something that proves you're more than just your father's legacy. Adrian turned to look at her. You're talking about a foundation or something? Maybe. Or a business. Something visible that changes the narrative. The council will never approve that. So don't ask them. Do it yourself. Show them it's possible. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. You really think that would work? I think it's worth trying. What's the worst that happens? They vote me out and I get killed for knowing too much. Okay, that's pretty bad, but what's the best that happens? We actually change something. We build something that lasts beyond just power and violence. So let's try. Over the next several months, they did exactly that. Elena reopened the bookstore, not the one where she used to work, but a new one, funded by Adrian but run by her. They employed people from the neighborhood, hosted community events, created a space that had nothing to do with the organization. It was small, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of Adrian's empire, but it was theirs, and it was real. The council noticed, of course. Mikhail called a meeting to discuss it. You're spending organization resources on a bookstore? Morozov demanded. I'm spending my personal resources on a legitimate business, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. It's a waste of time and money. It's an investment in something beyond immediate profit, and it's working. We've had positive press for the first time in years. People are starting to see us as more than just criminals. We are criminals, Belov said bluntly. We're businessmen who operate in gray areas, Adrian countered, and there's nothing stopping us from also operating in legal ones. The argument went on for hours. But in the end, the council couldn't actually stop him. The bookstore wasn't using organization resources, wasn't connected to their illegal operations, and was actually generating positive attention. Elena watched from the sidelines as Adrian navigated the politics, fought for every inch of progress, and slowly started to shift how people thought about the Volkov name. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, a vandalism incident that was clearly a message, threats from competitors who didn't like the changing landscape, constant pressure from within the organization to abandon the plan. But they kept going. 6 months after the bookstore opened, Elena found out she was pregnant. She stared at the positive test for a long time before telling Adrian, trying to process what it meant to bring a child into his world. Their world. When she finally showed him, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for: shock, joy, terror, all in rapid succession. "We're having a baby," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "We're having a baby," Elena confirmed. "I have no idea how to be a father. I have no idea how to be a mother. We'll figure it out together." Adrian pulled her close, and she could feel his heart racing. "This changes everything. I know. I need to make this world safer. For them. For you. We will. One step at a time." The pregnancy changed Adrian in ways Elena hadn't expected. He became more focused, more driven, more willing to take risks if it meant building something better. He pushed the legitimization plan harder, converting more assets to legal operations, creating distance between the Volkov name and the criminal activities that had defined it for generations. The council fought him every step of the way. Morozov tried to rally votes for his removal. Belov made thinly veiled threats. Even Mikhail seemed uncertain about the changes. But Adrian didn't back down. The showdown came when Adrian was 8 months pregnant, another council meeting, another vote on his leadership. "You've become a liability," Morozov said bluntly. "Your focus is divided. You're making decisions based on personal concerns instead of business." "I'm making decisions based on long-term sustainability," Adrian countered. "Everything I've done has strengthened our position. We're more profitable, more secure, and less likely to end up in prison than we were 2 years ago." "You're also weaker, softer. Your wife has made you, Careful," Adrian said quietly, and the room went silent. "My wife is not up for discussion. She's the root of the problem. She's the reason I'm still alive to lead this organization. She's the reason we're evolving instead of dying slowly." Adrian stood, commanding the room. "I'm done apologizing for wanting something beyond power. I'm done pretending that violence is the only answer, and I'm done letting people who are afraid of change dictate how I lead." "Then maybe you shouldn't be leading," Morozov shot back. "Maybe I shouldn't, so vote me out. Right now. Let's end this." The challenge hung in the air. Dmitry Petrov spoke first. "I vote to keep Adrian as head of the organization." Viktor Orlov raised his hand. "Same." Belov hesitated, then nodded. "I agree." That left Morozov alone in his dissent. "This is a mistake," he said. "Then you're free to leave the organization," Adrian said calmly. "I won't stop you, but I also won't let you sabotage what we're building." Morozov stared at him for a long moment, then stood and walked out. The room remained silent until the door closed behind him. "Well," Mikhail said finally, "that was dramatic." "Is he actually leaving?" Belov asked. "We'll find out," Adrian said. "Either way, we move forward." Elena gave birth on a Tuesday in March, a girl they named Katya, after the sister Adrian had never been able to save. When the nurse placed her in Elena's arms, tiny and perfect and completely unaware of the complicated world she'd been born into, Elena felt something shift in her chest. "She's beautiful," Adrian whispered, his voice breaking. "She's ours." They sat together in the hospital room, both of them exhausted and awed and terrified, understanding that they'd just added a new dimension to an already complicated life. "What kind of world are we giving her?" Elena asked quietly. "A better one than the one I grew up in. I promise you that." And he meant it. Over the next year, Adrian continued transforming the organization, bringing in more legitimate revenue streams, distancing the family from the worst of the violence. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats, still moments of danger, still the constant awareness that they lived in a world where power meant survival. But it was better. Elena reopened 2 more bookstores, creating jobs and community spaces in neighborhoods that desperately needed them. Adrian started a scholarship program for kids from low-income families. Together, they built a foundation that focused on education and economic opportunity. The Volkov name started to mean something different. Still powerful, still connected to the organization, but also associated with positive change. Mikhail remained a skeptic, but a supportive one, watching Adrian's evolution with something that might have been approval. Katerina became a surprisingly devoted grandmother, showing up at the penthouse with gifts and advice, and a gentleness Elena had never seen from her before. And slowly, carefully, they built a life that was more than just survival. On Katya's first birthday, Elena and Adrian stood in the garden where they'd been married, watching their daughter take wobbly steps on uncertain legs. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked. "Choosing this life?" Elena thought about it, really thought about the fear and danger, the constant navigation of a world she'd never imagined being part of, but also about the love and partnership, the way they'd built something real together. "Every day," she said honestly, "and not at all. That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense, but it's ours." Adrian pulled her close, and they watched their daughter explore the garden with the kind of fearless curiosity that comes from not yet understanding that the world can be dangerous. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For staying. For choosing me. For believing we could build something better. We're still building it. I know. But it's working. And it was. Not perfectly. Not without cost. But it was working." Years later, when people asked Elena what it was like being married to Adrian Volkov, she never quite knew how to answer. How could she explain the contradiction of loving someone dangerous, of building a life in a world that operated by different rules? She couldn't tell them about the night she still woke up from nightmares about the warehouse, or the way she'd learned to read Adrian's moods by the set of his shoulders, or the constant calculation of risk versus reward that became second nature. But she also couldn't tell them about the drawings he still made when he couldn't sleep, or the way he'd transformed from a man defined by violence to someone actually trying to build a legacy worth leaving to their daughter, or the quiet moments when they were just two people who'd chosen each other against all logic. So she usually just smiled and said it was complicated, because it was. Love always is, especially when it means choosing to build something real in a world built on shadows, when it means believing that people can change, that futures can be different from pasts, that hope is stronger than history. Elena had walked into Adrian's world thinking she understood what she was choosing. She'd been wrong about almost everything, but she'd been right about one thing: loving him was worth the cost. Even on the hard days, even when the weight of his world felt crushing, even when she looked at their daughter and worried about the legacy they were leaving her. Because together, they were building something that mattered, something that would last beyond violence and power and all the darkness that had defined the Volkov name for generations. They were building a family, a future, a choice to be better than what came before. And in the end, that was enough. The bookstore flourished, the foundation grew, and slowly but surely, the Volkov organization evolved into something that could exist in daylight instead of just shadows. It wasn't redemption. Adrian was too pragmatic to believe in redemption. But it was transformation. And sometimes that was more important. On their 5th anniversary, Adrian took Elena back to Greece, to the same balcony where they'd first talked about changing the world. "Do you think we did it?" he asked, looking out at the Mediterranean. "Change things?" "We're doing it. Present tense. It's not finished." "Will it ever be?" "Probably not. But that's okay." Adrian turned to face her, and in the fading light, she could see the man he'd become. Still dangerous, still complicated, but also softer in ways that only she got to see. "I love you," he said, "in case I don't say it enough." "You say it plenty." "I could say it more." "Then say it more." So he did. Every day, in small ways and large ones, in the life they built together and the future they were creating for their daughter. And Elena said it back, meaning it more with each passing year, understanding that love wasn't about finding someone perfect, but about choosing someone worth fighting for. They'd both made that choice, over and over again, through danger and doubt, through transformation and growth, through every moment when walking away would have been easier. They chose each other. And in a world built on power and violence and calculated risk, that choice, that simple, terrifying, beautiful choice, made all the difference.